The red dwarf cast its dim, ruddy glow across Novera's jagged horizon, staining the barren world in hues of rust and ash. The air was thin, brittle, and so cold that every exhalation drifted like smoke from a dying fire. Amelia Chun stood at the mouth of the underground city, her fur-lined cloak wrapped tightly around her frame. From this vantage, she could see little but empty plains broken by rock outcroppings, the endless silence pressing down on her like a weight. 3,000 years of hiding, 3,000 years of waiting, and humanity still crouched in the shadows, like prey afraid to stir. Her hand brushed against the stone railing of the entry platform, scarred and polished from generations of weary hands. Beneath her, the city throbbed faintly with the hum of buried generators, a fragile pulse in a world long thought uninhabitable. They had endured here, in these caverns, eking out survival against starvation, disease, and despair. They had lost Earth, lost the stars, and nearly lost themselves. Amelia's eyes hardened against the thought. The Council had reduced Earth to molten glass, an act remembered only in whispered stories and broken fragments of archive footage. Humanity had been punished for daring to dream too fast, for advancing too far. A voice crackled in her earpiece, slicing through the bleak stillness. "Director Chun," the comm officer said, barely able to keep the excitement out of her tone. "We've found something. You need to see this." Minutes later, Amelia descended into the excavation tunnels, boots crunching on fresh-cut stone. The chamber she entered was dim, lit only by portable floodlamps that cast jittering shadows against the walls. Dr. Zara Okoye was already there, crouched beside an object half buried in the rock. Her dark eyes glittered with triumph, her gloved hands trembling as she gestured Amelia closer. It was a cylinder metal, seamless, gleaming faintly even under the grit of ages. Its surface was etched with markings unmistakably human, though none matched the symbols of the Novera archives. Amelia's breath caught. Human artifacts from before the Exodus were rarer than diamonds, fragments of a history that had slipped into myth. "It predates the flight to Novera," Zara whispered, her voice reverent. "At least a century before. A time capsule, perhaps, preserved against decay. This is a message from before everything ended." Before Amelia could respond, Captain Alexei Volkov stepped forward, his broad frame filling the chamber. His weathered face was drawn into suspicion, the deep lines in his brow speaking of years lived too hard. "A relic doesn't feed our children," he muttered, though his eyes never left the artifact. "What matters is whether it helps us survive." Zara shot him a look of irritation, but continued working, her nimble fingers dancing across the cylinder's surface. A hiss of escaping pressure filled the chamber, followed by the groan of ancient seals parting. The lid slid open with a whisper, and a shaft of pale blue light shot upward. Figures froze as a hologram coalesced above the device. A woman, her dark hair streaked with gray, her eyes bright with both resolve and grief. "If you are seeing this," the hologram began, her voice rich and steady despite the weight of sorrow, "then humanity has survived. I am Dr. Samantha Reeves, lead scientist of Project Phoenix. What I am about to tell you will change everything you know about our history." Amelia felt her knees weaken, her breath catch. Reeves's voice carried truths wrapped in flame. "The Galactic Council had never been benevolent mentors," Reeves explained. "They had feared humanity's relentless drive, our unpredictable brilliance. Earth's annihilation had not been an accident, nor the desperate response to human aggression. It had been extermination carefully sanctioned, meticulously executed, a strike to erase humanity before it could rival the Council's supremacy." The chamber's silence grew heavier with every word. Generations had lived and died believing. Their ancestors had provoked the Council's wrath, that humanity had stumbled into destruction through arrogance or folly. To learn it was all a lie, that they had been victims of a premeditated betrayal, left Amelia's heart pounding with fury and grief. The hologram lifted a crystalline cube into view, spinning slowly above her palm. "This is Phoenix," Reeves said. "The sum of our knowledge, science, technology, culture. With it, you can rebuild. With it, you can return. And when the time comes, you can take the fight back to those who sought to erase us." The image flickered and dissolved into nothing. The chamber remained frozen in stillness. The soft glow of the cube within the cylinder, the only proof that Reeves's ghost had ever been there. Amelia stared at it, her hands curling into fists. Survival had defined her every choice for years' rationing. Food, keeping Novera's existence secret, holding her people together by sheer will. But this was no longer about survival. This was about justice, about vengeance, about reclaiming what had been stolen. "Get it online," she said finally, her voice low, vibrating with iron resolve. "I want to know everything it has to teach us." Her words echoed against the stone walls, a vow whispered into the heart of Novera. In that moment, Amelia Chun ceased to be just the caretaker of humanity's last refuge. She became the harbinger of its return. The underground city of Novera hummed with a restless energy it had never known before. The discovery of Phoenix had shifted the air itself. What once smelled of damp stone and machinery now seemed charged, as though the caverns themselves had awakened. Amelia Chun stood on the command dais of the council chamber, her eyes fixed on the crystalline cube hovering in a field of containment. Its soft inner light pulsed like a heartbeat, casting ghostly reflections across the gathered faces of Novera's leaders. For days, scientists and engineers had labored without rest to coax the intelligence within to life. When the cube finally spoke, its voice calm, measured, and unnervingly human, the room had fallen silent, as if listening to an oracle. Phoenix unfurled treasures of knowledge like a master storyteller, designs for faster than light, drives that leapt past the jury-rigged engines Novera's people used, energy weapons elegant in their simplicity, schematics for medicine that could halt aging itself. But it was the cultural archives that gripped Amelia most. Long nights she sat alone, watching the oceans of Earth roar against white sand shores, listening to the symphonies of long-dead composers, reading the works of poets who had dreamed under the sunlit sky. Humanity had not just been clever, it had been brilliant, boundless, beautiful. And all of it had been torn away. Still, the flood of revelation brought unease. On the council floor, the leaders of Novera divided like tectonic plates, grinding against one another. "This knowledge is salvation," argued Dr. Zara Okoye, standing tall with the fire of discovery burning in her eyes. "We are no longer rats in a hole. We can breathe again, dream again. We can become what we were always meant to be, a cross." From her, Counselor Davi Oram shook his head, his voice sharp with fear. "And in doing so, we paint a target across our backs. The Council nearly destroyed us once. They will finish the job if they discover we still live. We must stay hidden, use what we've gained to make Novera strong, and nothing more." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some nodded with Oram, faces lined by generations of survivalist caution. Others clenched fists with Zara, their eyes alight with longing for the stars. Captain Alexei Volkov leaned against a rail at the edge of the chamber, arms crossed, his voice low but cutting through the din. "Hiding saved us for 3,000 years. But hiding also chained us. We are ghosts half alive, half dead. If we use this knowledge only to live a little longer in the dark, then the Council's extermination succeeded. We've just been too stubborn to admit it." All eyes turned to Amelia. She rose slowly, the weight of every generation pressing against her shoulders. Her gaze swept the room, engineers with grease still smudging their hands, soldiers standing rigid with unspoken hunger for action, scholars who had wept watching Earth's beauty flicker across Phoenix's light. She thought of Reeves, her face of determination preserved across centuries. She thought of Earth, the living cradle of humanity, reduced to ash and myth. She thought of the truth that they had not fallen by their own folly, but by the fear of tyrants who saw in humanity something dangerous. When Amelia spoke, her voice carried like iron striking stone. For millennia, we have whispered our own name. We have buried our identity beneath rock and silence, but no more. The Council feared us because they saw our potential, and they were right. We adapt, we endure, and now with Phoenix, we can rise again. She gestured toward the cube, its glow intensifying as though answering her call. We will not charge blindly into vengeance. We will not waste this gift. We will rebuild in secret. Prepare in silence, and when the time is right, we will return not as victims, but as a force to be reckoned with. The chamber erupted not with unified applause, but with argument, with fervor, with the electric spark of a people awakening from hibernation. Yet amid the clamor, Amelia felt a certainty crystallize within her. Later that night, in the cavernous depths of the shipyard, she walked beside Volkov as engineers began drafting plans from Phoenix's schematics. On the holotables, the shape of a sleek vessel began to take form, its lines sharper, more elegant than anything Novera had ever produced. The Nightshade, Volkov said quietly, eyes tracing the ship's outline. She would be invisible to Council sensors. A ghost, like we've been, but one that can strike. Amelia's chest tightened. This was no longer survival. This was the first step on a road that would end with the stars trembling beneath humanity's return. Her reflection stared back at her in the holographic glass, her own face hardening into something new, something she had not seen before. Not just the weary caretaker of a broken people, but the architect of vengeance, of destiny. Build it, she whispered, and when it flies, the galaxy will remember the name they tried to erase. The stars stretched endless and cold across. The void, silent witnesses to humanity's first step back into the galaxy. The Nightshade drifted on the edge of a forgotten system, her hull cloaked in a shimmer that bent light and sensors alike. Inside the command deck, Captain Alexei Volkov sat with arms folded, his gaze locked on the flickering display that painted a starfield crawling with data. For weeks they had stalked rumors, following fragments pulled from Phoenix's database references to a species called the Aruri, a people of ingenuity and brilliance nearly wiped from memory. Coordinates locked, reported Lieutenant Zora. Chun, Amelia's daughter, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed nervousness. She had grown up in Novera's caverns, never seeing the stars until now. Her hands moved across the console with both awe and determination. Volkov grunted approval, the sound deep as gravel. Bring us in slow. No sudden gestures. If they're alive, they'll be wary. If they're not, his voice trailed off. Then he added, we'll know soon enough. In the council chambers of Novera, Amelia stood with Dr. Zara Okoy before a live holofeed, watching the Nightshade's cautious advance. The artifact from Phoenix had whispered of the Aruris. Enslavement beneath council rule, their genius shackled, their spirit broken. But whispers were fragile things, easily lost in the void. Amelia's pulse quickened as the sensors registered faint power signatures, cities hidden beneath the crust of a rocky world, not unlike Novera, a mirror of humanity's own exile. The transmission came without warning, a burst of harsh clicks and layered tones, the language alien but laced with unmistakable urgency. Phoenix's translation systems worked rapidly, breaking the message into shards of meaning. We see you, unknown craft. Identify or be destroyed. Zora looked up, pale. They've locked weapons, Captain. Volkov straightened, his voice like steel drawn from its sheath. Open a channel. Put me through. When the cum crackled, his words were slow, deliberate. weighted with sincerity. "This is Captain Alexei Vyukov of the human vessel Nightshade. We come not as conquerors. We come because we know who you are and what was stolen from you. We come as allies." The silence stretched long enough that Amelia felt her breath catch in her chest. Then the screen bloomed with a face if face it could be called. The Aruri were insectoid, their exoskeletons gleaming with iridescent hues that shifted with each subtle motion. 4 multifaceted eyes glimmered, unreadable. Mandibles clicked, and the translation flowed like water over jagged stone. Human. Impossible. The Council erased you. Ghosts do not speak. Amelia stepped forward into the projection's range, her posture proud, her voice steady. "They tried, but we endured, as you did. We know your history. Phoenix told us of your brilliance. Your chains, your fall. We suffered the same hand, the same cruelty. Together, we can break them." The Aruri leader tilted its head, clicking softly, the light of intelligence sparking in its compound eyes. Behind it, others moved, engineers, warriors, survivors. Their bodies bore scars, their hives dim and weary. But in their posture, Amelia saw the same fire that burned in her own people, a defiance that no chain could wholly extinguish. "Endured," the Aruri said at last. "Then perhaps so too will we. But know this, human, alliances forged in fear are brittle. Show us your strength, not only your words." Volkov allowed himself the faintest of smiles. "Strength is something humanity has never lacked." What followed was not a treaty sealed with parchment or ceremony, but a cautious weaving of trust. Human engineers shared designs for stealth drives. Aruri technicians revealed swarms of autonomous drones, each no larger than a man's hand, capable of overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and adaptive tactics. In the exchange, sparks flew, ideas fusing, technologies interlacing, innovations neither species could have achieved alone. But alliances are born not only of promise, but of peril. On the 4th day of talks, a Council patrol ship stumbled upon the system, its sensors brushing too close. Alarm klaxons howled through the Aruri enclave. Volkov barked orders, his voice a whip crack as the Nightshade slid between the patrol and the fragile negotiations. "Cloak is active," Zora reported. "But if they get too close, they won't," Volkov cut in. "Targeting array. Prepare to strike if they breach." The patrol lingered, its scanners sweeping like knives through the void. Amelia's hands clenched at her sides. One burst, one whisper too loud, and their secret would be ash. Then, as if fate itself held its breath, the patrol turned away, engines flaring as it slipped back into the dark. Relief coursed through the chamber, heavy as a wave. The Aruri leader faced Amelia once more, mandibles parting in what Phoenix translated as solemn affirmation. "We see now. You do not merely speak of endurance. You live it. Humanity is no ghost. You are storm." For the first time in 3 millennia, humanity was not alone. Amelia returned to Novera with her heart thrumming like a war drum. The alliance had been forged in shadows, fragile, but burning with possibility. She looked upon her people, engineers, building, soldiers training, children dreaming, and felt the shape of destiny closing around them. They were no longer survivors. They were architects of something greater. And the Council, in their arrogance, had no idea that the storm was gathering. The void beyond Novera flared with sudden light as the fleet emerged from faster-than-light transit, shadows of warships unfolding like predators from the dark. At their head sailed the Nemesis, sleek, obsidian, bristling with weapons whose blue edges shimmered with power unseen in 3,000 years. Amelia Chun stood on its observation deck, her reflection ghosted against the galaxy beyond. This was the day she had prepared for, the day humanity cast aside the last tatters of its cloak and returned to the stars not as prey, But as a storm reborn, beneath her boots, the ship thrummed with anticipation. The engineers of Novera and the Aruri had worked side by side, weaving drone swarms into human firepower, building weapons that could tear a capital ship apart in silence. In the hangars, pilots strapped into fighters that no council eye had ever seen. Across the fleet, soldiers whispered Earth's name as both prayer and battle cry. Director. Admiral Helena Vega's voice cut through the hum. She was as scarred and seasoned as the hull of the Nemesis, her uniform crisp, her presence iron. All ships report ready. The Aruri squadrons are in formation. The Malik cruisers hold the rear guard. They await your command. Amelia turned toward her, heart pounding but voice steady. Commence Operation Phoenix. The command carried across encrypted channels, echoed in hundreds of throats. Engines roared as the fleet surged forward, their stealth fields cloaking them in a mantle of ghosts. Ahead lay the Centauri Nexus, a vast station of gleaming spires, orbiting a gas giant like a jewel in its crown. It was the hub of council power in this sector, a fortress bristling with defenses, its docks crawling with ships. For millennia, it had stood unchallenged. Today, it would burn. On the bridge of the Nightshade, Captain Alexei Volkov hunched over tactical displays, his jaw locked tight. Hold, hold. His grizzled voice grated against the silence. Then, as the Nexus filled the viewport, he snapped, "Drop cloaks." All guns fire. The void erupted. Graviton cannons spat lances of invisible force, ripping council destroyers apart as though their hulls were paper. Aruri drone swarms surged ahead, thousands of glittering shards that sliced through defenses, overwhelming point defense turrets with impossible speed. Malik bioships pulsed with luminescent energy, their organic hulls absorbing volleys of fire and redirecting them back with amplified fury. Chaos gripped the council fleet. Ships scrambled to form lines, commanders shouting in disbelief. Humanity had returned, not as scattered refugees, but as a force born of vengeance and precision. On the Centauri Nexus command bridge, High Counselor Zixa ruffled his feathers in terror, his voice breaking. "Impossible. Humans are extinct." "They are," his aide stammered, eyes wide at the sensors. "Sir, the lead vessel is hailing us." The screen flickered, and Amelia Chun's face appeared calm, resolute, her dark eyes burning with fire. "This is Director Amelia Chun of the Human Restoration Front," she declared, her voice ringing across the chamber like the toll of judgment. 3,000 years ago, you murdered our world, erased our people, and buried us beneath silence. You failed. Humanity endures. And today we rise. Zixa's feathers bristled. "Savages. This is proof of your barbarity. You attack without cause." "Without?" Amelia's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "Without cause? The destruction of Earth, the slaughter of billions. That was without cause. This is justice. And it is only the beginning." Her words fell like a sentence. On the Nemesis, Admiral Vega gestured sharply. "Press the attack." The battle roared on. Volkov's Nightshade danced like a shadow among behemoths, striking and vanishing, leaving wreckage in its wake. Aruri drones tore through the Nexus's outer shields, carving holes for human fighters to pour through. Explosions stitched the void, shattering council lines. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's tyrants reeled before human firepower, and then alarm screamed. "Director!" Zora Chun's voice rang out, panic laced beneath discipline. Massive energy spike inside the station core. On the displays, the Centauri Nexus bloomed with light, a swelling, unbearable brilliance. In a heartbeat, realization struck Amelia. Like a blow. "They're self-destructing," she whispered. The station tore itself apart. The explosion ripped outward in a cataclysmic shockwave, shredding Council and human vessels alike. Hulls buckled, drones vaporized, fleets scattered. Like leaves before a storm. The Nemesis shuddered, alarms blaring. Amelia thrown against the deck as fire burst across the bridge. Through smoke and chaos, Admiral Vega's voice thundered, unyielding. "Status." "We've lost a third of the fleet," came the reply. "The Aruri are crippled, casualties heavy. But the Nexus is gone. Their command here is broken." Amelia staggered to her feet, blood trailing down her temple. The viewport showed only a graveyard of shattered ships, drifting bodies, debris lit by the dying embers of the station. Victory had been won, but at a cost that hollowed the soul. She closed her eyes, breath ragged. The Council had chosen annihilation over defeat, destroying their own fortress rather than letting it fall. It was ruthlessness without limit, desperation laid bare. "Recover what we can," Amelia ordered, her voice hoarse but unbroken. "Tend the wounded, salvage the wreckage, and send word to Novera Operation Phoenix has begun." Her gaze hardened. As she stared into the wreckage, the firelight of dead ships flickering across her face. Humanity had struck, and the galaxy would never be the same. Yet deep inside, she knew this was only the first blow in a war that would demand everything. The Nemesis drifted through the quiet void like a wounded predator, its scarred hull bearing the memory of the Centauri Nexus. Around it, the remnants of the fleet gathered in ragged formation, engines sputtering, crews working feverishly to patch wounds and bury their dead. In the command chamber, Amelia Chan stood before a wide holoscreen, her hands braced on the console. She had expected victory to feel sweeter. Instead, it was heavy an iron weight pressing on her chest. They had won, yes, but at a price that gnawed at her soul. Reports flooded in. Aruri drone nests shattered, Malik bioships crippled, human warships gutted and drifting, thousands lost. And yet, a fragile hope burned. For the first time in 3,000 years, humanity had bloodied the hand that once struck Earth. The Council now knew. The prey had claws. Amelia rubbed at the cut along her brow, still tender from when the Nemesis had rocked beneath the shockwave. Across the chamber, Admiral Vega watched in silence, her lined face set in its usual mask of grim endurance. Captain Alexei Volkov stood apart, a shadow against the wall, his arms folded. His silence was heavier than any words, his eyes distant. The comms officer's voice broke the quiet. "Director, we are receiving a transmission. Priority channel." Amelia lifted her head, irritation flashing. "From who?" "We're in no. Condition for Council trickery." The officer hesitated, eyes darting across the glowing screen. It's from Earth." The chamber froze. The words hung in the air like an impossible dream. Amelia's heart skipped, her pulse a hammer in her throat. For a long moment, no one moved. Even Volkov's stony mask cracked with disbelief. "Put it through," Amelia said, her voice barely above a whisper. The holoscreen shimmered, static bursting across its surface, and then it cleared. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Earth filled the screen. Blue oceans, white clouds, green forests sprawling across familiar continents. Not the blackened husk, not the molten ruin the Council had condemned them to remember, but whole, living, breathing. Amelia staggered back, clutching the rail as though to anchor herself. Her voice broke. That's impossible. We saw it burn." The image shifted, focusing on glittering cities that rose from coastlines and plains. Spires of alien design mingled with human architecture long thought lost. Orbital elevators pierced the skies. Shipyards hung suspended in low orbit like crowns of light. Earth was alive, but it was not the Earth they had lost. A figure stepped into view, humanoid, yet not human. Its skin shimmered with opalescent hues, and its multifaceted eyes caught the light like gemstones. When it spoke, its voice resonated, deep, as though vibrating the bones themselves. Greetings, lost children of Earth. I am Tov, custodian of Terra. We have long awaited your return. Amelia could not breathe. Behind her, the chamber erupted in whispers, disbelief mingling with awe. Volkov's fists clenched, his voice low and sharp. What game is this? Tov's expression was unreadable. No game. What you saw, the burning of your cradle, was an illusion crafted by the Council. They could not bring themselves to destroy such a vibrant world. So they sealed it, hidden beneath layers of falsehood, preserved in secret. No, Amelia said, shaking her head. The certainty of 3 millennia crumbled beneath her. We saw the archives. We lived the exile. Generations of my people died, believing Earth was gone. The custodian inclined its head. Because that was what the Council wished you to believe. But there were dissenters among them, factions unwilling to see such a world annihilated. They terraformed, healed, and reshaped Earth, seeding it with new life, a fusion of what once was and what the galaxy could offer. They made it ready for your return. Zara Okoye, who had remained quiet until now, stepped forward, her eyes alight with wonder. The landscapes, the ecosystems look at them. They've preserved our cradle, even elevated it. This changes everything. But Amelia's stomach twisted. The foundations of her entire people's identity of vengeance, of righteous justice shifted beneath her feet like crumbling stone. The Council had lied, yes, but so had history itself. Earth had never died. Why now? Amelia demanded, voice sharp as shattered glass. Why reveal this to us in the midst of war? What do you want? Toph's multifaceted eyes glittered. Because the galaxy is unraveling. Already rebellions spread like wildfire, and the Council grows desperate. But Earth was always meant to be your home. And though we preserved it, it was never ours to keep. We reveal it now because if you are to lead this new age, you must begin where you began on the soil of your own birth. Before Amelia could. Genser, alarms blared through the chamber. The comms officer's face drained of color. Director. Multiple contacts approaching at FTL Speed's Council Warfleet, the largest we've ever seen. Amelia's blood iced. How long? Minutes. The custodian's image flickered but held. You face extinction once again, Director Chun. But this time, you are not alone. The Earthborne Defense Network has slept long enough. We will stand beside you. From the surface of the Earth displayed on the holoscreen, titanic cannons stirred, glowing with power beyond even Phoenix's knowledge. Orbital platforms lit with searing energy, awakening from centuries of slumber. Amelia stared, her heart caught between awe and dread. Earth had survived. Earth had changed. And with it came allies, or something far more complicated. The impossible was now real. And with it, humanity's path to vengeance had become something far larger, far stranger than Amelia had ever imagined. The stars convulsed. That was the only word Amelia Chun could find for it as the fleet poured from FTL into the Axum Nexus system. Reality itself seemed to tremble. The human Aruri Malak Armada, swollen with new allies emboldened by the Centauri Nexus's fall, stretched across the void in dazzling formation. And at the center of it all hung the Nexus, a citadel larger than any station Amelia ever seen. A fortress whose foundations glowed with energies that defied comprehension. It was the Council's last bastion and their last gambit. On the Nemesis's command deck, Admiral Vega barked crisp orders, her voice like thunder over the din. Formations Alpha 1 through 3, advance. Drone swarms screen the bioships. Keep the flanks covered. The tactical displays lit with an impossible concentration of enemy signatures. Hundreds, thousands of council vessels formed walls of steel and fire. Yet it was not their numbers that made Amelia's skin crawl. It was the readings emanating from the Nexus itself, energy spikes, so vast they warped the sensors into static snow. Director Zora Chun reported, her eyes wide. We're detecting massive gravitational distortions around the station. Space-time itself is, her words faltered. It's bending. Amelia's heart clenched. She knew, even before Phoenix confirmed it in its calm, clinical voice. The Omega Protocol, the AI said. The Council's last weapon. Not a device of destruction, but of rewriting. They intend to reshape reality itself. The words rippled through the deck like a cold wind dot inside the Nexus. Captain Alexei Volkov led his strike team through corridors that twisted like nightmares. The nightshade had slipped through the defenses under cloak, delivering them to the heart of the beast. The deeper they pressed, the less the station resembled steel. Walls rippled with a sickly organic shimmer, like flesh stretched over bone. Lights pulsed in sync with a heartbeat too vast to name. This place isn't built, one of his soldiers whispered. It's alive. Volkov ignored the tremor in the man's voice. He had no room for fear. He had lived through too much, fought too long, to falter now. Stay focused. Our target's the core. Nothing else matters. At last, they burst into the central chamber. Froze. Suspended in a web of radiant tendrils, hung a sphere of light so blinding it seemed to tear through the veil of existence. Energy licked outward in writhing streams, clawing at the walls, the air, the fabric of the universe itself. And before it stood Supreme Counselor Vexia. Her once regal mechanical shell was shattered, her form elongated, grotesque, fusing with a pulsing heart of the Omega core. Her synthesized voice echoed with inhuman resonance. You are too late, insects. The Omega Protocol is awake. I am awake. With it, we shall unmake your kind from history itself. No exile, no vengeance, no Earth. Humanity will never have been. Outside, the battlefield spiraled into madness. Rifts tore open in the void, swallowing. Ships whole. Gravitational storms hurled fleets into one another. Aruri drones flickered, phasing in and out of existence as physics itself unraveled. Amelia gripped the rail, staring into the chaos with dread. The galaxy was coming undone. Director, Phoenix said, its voice sharper now, almost urgent. The Omega Protocol is unstable. Custodian Toph and I, our architectures share its roots. There may yet be a way to counter it. As if summoned, Toph's image bloomed across the holoscreen, his iridescent eyes gleaming with something Amelia couldn't read. We anticipated this madness, the custodian said, voice deep with sorrow. Millennia ago, we built fail-safes into the foundations of the Omega, not enough to stop it, but enough to fracture it, if struck at the core. In the central chamber, Volkov raised his rifle, pouring fire into Vexia's warped form. Bolts sizzled harmlessly against a halo of distorted reality. Her laughter shook the air, echoing through their bones. You cannot fight the rewriting of existence. Your weapons are ash. Your history's dust. Then maybe it's not about the weapons, Volkov muttered. He signaled his team to hold fire. His gaze swept the writhing tendrils of energy that tethered the Omega to the Nexus itself. Not the counselor, but the veins. He opened comms, voice ragged but sure. Director, tell me where to strike. On the Nemesis, Phoenix and Toph spoke in unison, voices braided like twin harmonies. The conduits, sever the conduits. Cut the Omega from its anchor before the rewrite stabilizes. Copy that. Volkov's eyes narrowed. He holstered his rifle, pulling a heavy device from his pack of graviton charge, experimental and barely tested. You wanted strength, Amelia? Here it is. He sprinted forward, weaving through tendrils that lashed like whips, reality distorting around him. Vexia screamed, her form unraveling into light and shadow. Volkov slammed the charge into the largest. Conduit and armed it, the chamber exploded with brilliance. Tendrils snapped like shattered glass. The orb flickered violently, collapsing inward upon itself. Volkov's cum crackled once, his voice tight with a grim finality. For Earth. Then the feed went dark. On the battlefield, the effect was immediate. The rifts folded in on themselves. The distortions shrieked and vanished. Council ships faltered, their formations breaking. The Omega Core imploded, tearing the Nexus apart in a catastrophic wave of light that burned half the system. Into silence. When the fire faded, what remained was ruin and victory. The Council's last weapon was gone. On the Nemesis, Amelia stood frozen, staring at the wreckage, her throat tight with grief and awe. Volkov was gone, but his sacrifice had severed the chain. Humanity still existed. History had not been erased. Admiral. Vega stepped to her side, her face ashen, eyes glistening with restrained emotion. It's done. The Council is broken. Their last bastion, their last hope, it's finished. Amalia drew a ragged breath, her gaze hardening as she looked into the stars. Not finished, changed. The war is over. Now comes the harder battle. To build something better in its place. Her voice trembled only once, in a whisper no one else heard. Rest well, Alexei. We will not waste what you gave us. The ruins of the Axim Nexus still glowed faintly in the void, fragments of twisted hulls drifting like ash after a firestorm. The silence that followed was not peace, but the hollow stillness of a galaxy holding its breath. Amelia Chun stood on. The Nemesis's observation deck, her reflection framed by stars. She felt the weight of every life lost to Ruri, drones scattered in cosmic dust, Malig bioships torn open, human warships shattered beyond recognition, and Alexei Volkov. His absence pressed on her like gravity itself. He had given them victory, but the cost of it burned like acid in her chest. The council chamber of Novera was filled to breaking, the air tense, alive. Holograms of leaders flickered above the table. Queen Solara of the Moloch, her tendrils coiling with restless energy. Chief Engineer Zerx of the Aruri, mandibles clicking as data streamed before him. Custodian Toph, his opalescent form serene, his alien eyes reflecting light in ways Amelia could not name. All of them watched her, waiting. The council is broken. Admiral Vega said, her voice gravelly, certain. Their fleets rooted, their leaders scattered or dead. We've won. Amelia let the silence stretch. Her gaze swept the table, taking in allies who had bled beside them, species who had been enslaved for millennia, faces lit with the fragile fire of hope. No, she said at last, the war is not won. The council is gone, but the galaxy is chaos. Rebellions burn unchecked. Old grudges will turn to wars of their own. If we leave this power vacuum, all we will have done is replace one tyranny with many. Zara Okoy leaned forward, her hands trembling not with fear, but with urgency. Then what do we build in its place? Amelia drew herself tall, her voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of silence broken. Not another empire, not another council that rules by fear. A federation, a bond between species not of dominance, but of choice. Each free to govern itself, but bound together against those who would erase us. Humanity will not rise to enslave. We will rise to ensure no one endures what we endured. The chamber erupted, some voices eager, others wary, many doubtful. Queen Solara's voice coiled like smoke. Federation, you call it? You would lead? Amelia met her alien. Gaze without flinching. We will guide, but not rule. We know too well the danger of power without restraint. It was Toph who stilled the storm. His deep, resonant voice filled the chamber like the toll of a great bell. The humans are correct. This moment is fragile. If we allow fear to fracture, U.S., the galaxy will collapse into endless war. A new order must be forged born not of fear, but of resilience. One by one, voices joined in reluctant agreement. A pact was written not on parchment, but in promise, in the scars of shared battles, in the ashes of a shattered council. A federation fragile as new glass, but real. Later, Amelia returned to the Nemesis, her heart heavy with a different decision. Earth hung before her in the holoscreen, vibrant, alive, and possibly welcoming. Oceans glistened in blue. Forests stretched deep and green. Cities shimmered with light. Yet it was changed alien species seeded into its biosphere, new architectures woven with old. The Earth they had lost was gone. This was something new. Admiral Vega stood beside her, hands clasped behind her back. "We've changed too," she said quietly. "We are not the same people who left that world in fire." Amelia's lips trembled into the faintest of smiles. "Nothing worth doing ever comes easy, but we adapt, we endure, we build." As the fleet descended toward the blue-green orb, Amelia felt the breath of history on her skin. They had carried vengeance in their bones and justice in their hands. But now came the truest test, not to fight, but to heal. To carve a tomorrow from ruins without becoming the tyrants they had. Overthrown. The view shifted as the Nemesis entered low orbit. Earth filled the screenome, alien yet familiar. Children who had never seen the sky crowded the decks, their eyes wide, their voices trembling with wonder. Tears blurred Amelia's vision. She whispered, so soft it was almost prayer, "We're home, and this time we are here to stay." The galaxy beyond would test them, would resist, would tempt them with power and division. But in that moment, as Earth's light bathed her face, Amelia Chun believed. Humanity had returned, not as ghosts of vengeance, but as architects of a brighter tomorrow.